Now we're going to look at non-experimental methods. So you've got observations and interviews, which are in another presentation, and correlational analysis. And to look at correlations, if you look at your booklet on page 20. So other methods that you can see in terms of experiments are meta-analyses. So meta-analysis is where you collate results from lots of studies on a specific topic to look at an overall picture of the findings. So for example, there's been lots of meta-analyses done on de-individuation. What's good about meta-analysis is an overview can lead to a more accurate understanding of a behaviour. So you can get an overview from lots of different studies, from lots of different experimenters, lots of different areas. However, because you're not using your own data, there is less knowledge of the accuracy of the data. So there is potential for bias that you are not aware of. So that's a meta-analysis, like a big study of reviewing other people's studies. So in a meta-analysis, there's no primary data, you're using the results from other studies. You can also use a case study. So a case study is an in-depth analysis of an individual or a small group. These tend to happen over time, so they're longitudinal as opposed to snapshot, which is studies that happen over a shorter period of time. And they tend to gather large amounts of data that's usually qualitative from lots of different sources. So some case studies we look at a case of Phineas Gage, so the railway guy, and the Clive Waring, so the memory guy with the piano. What's good about case studies is they have rich, detailed information. They usually look at unusual behaviour or where cases are rare, and they can challenge or support other larger theories. However, they can be prone to bias, they are less reliable, and they lack population validity. So that's a case study. Content analysis is where you can identify patterns or trends in large amounts of qualitative data. When you are carrying out content analysis, you need to decide how you're going to sample the information. So, for example, if you're looking at information in a book, you're going to read every page, every word. Are you just going to look at something every so often and use a time sampling approach? You need to think about how you're going to code the data. So what behavioural categories you're going to use. And then how you're going to represent this data. Decant it, describe it, tally it. What are you going to do? Thematic analysis. The point of that is to impose some order on the data. So it's a type of content analysis. In thematic analysis, you need to ensure that when you are ordering the data, it represents participants' perspective. It makes sure that the order emerges from the data, so there's no bias in there. You will create a summary of the data, and then you'll be able to identify themes from there. So that's thematic analysis. In terms of content analysis, when you're categorizing data, you want to group common items together. You can use pre-existing categories, so that's where you set the categories before you do the research. So that's kind of top down, or you can use emergent categories where the categories emerge or kind of come up while you are looking at the data. So that's more bottom up. Data, once it's been categorized, can then be quantified, so it's put into a numerical form, and then you could put it in a graph if you wished. So some ways that you can code data in content analysis is you can code words, so count the numbers of words in an example. Can you look for a theme? You can look for a character, or you can kind of code in terms of time and space. When evaluating content analysis, what is good about it is detail, it's in-depth. You can compare different sets of data with each other and present your results graphically. However, it's time-consuming, it's subjective, and there is some bias in there when you're creating themes and you're coding units.